Hello, this is Kim McAllister, and we're going to discuss what quantitative research is. We have a series of learning objectives, which you can read on your lecture notes. So we're going to talk about what quantitative research is. Quantitative research is very formal, objective, it's rigorous. We're looking at statistical data. We're not looking at feelings or opinions or um, doing surveys about how things have impacted you. That's the qualitative research that we'll talk about in the next lecture set. This is quantitative. It's looking at relationships between variables. It can be used to determine effectiveness of treatments and nursing interventions. So this is a very formal, very structured type of research process. There are four main types that we're going to look at, which are descriptive, correlational, quasi-experimental, and then experimental. Descriptive research looks at real life situations. It looks at things as they are, as conditions are. And so it may be looking at what are the characteristics of people with this particular disease. It may look at relationships. It's not taking a particular variable and then experimenting with it. It's gathering information and using to describe and look at what something is. Descriptive research is usually carried out with large numbers of people, and it may be something that's used to help determine a hypothesis, because you may be conducting interviews or surveys to find out why something happened or what the normal is for patients. For example, what type of problems do patients with a particular illness experience? What is a common set of symptoms? So that's in a nutshell what descriptive research is. Correlational research looks at the relationship between two variables. It does not determine cause and effect, but it can determine the strength and the type of relationship. Quasi-experimental research does look at cause and effect to relationships. There's less control with quasi than with a true experimental, and this is because samples are not randomly selected. And while that may seem like it may be counterproductive to research, it's very useful to use when it's not ethical to divide people into groups. I think before I've given the example of if you wanted to study problems with mothers who smoked while they were pregnant, you would not want to randomly set a group of people, of pregnant women, into a group that smoked and a group that didn't. So with quasi, you can use groups that already exist, and then you can compare them. So it's important to know that it's not as controlled as a true experimental research study, because you can't eliminate all the variables and control them. So with an experimental research, you have random assignment to the groups, and you use an experimental group and a control group, and then your population who was selected, your sample that was selected to participate in the study, is randomly assigned. If the researcher does not know who was assigned to which group, then it's called a double blind, because both the participants and the researcher have no idea if the participants are in a control group or if they're in the experimental group. If it's just a single blind, then the participants don't know which group that they're in, but the experimentals do. So the whole point of conducting an experiment is to look at cause and effect. Does this cause that? They're very controlled, they're objective, they're going to use and look at independent and dependent variables. So this in a nutshell just went through the 4 basic types of quantitative research: descriptive, correlational, quasi, and experimental. Next, we'll look at some different characteristics of research.